And really, all these U.S. conflicts in the Middle East, can we really tie them all to Israel and
Oh yeah,
Israel's
yeah,
control?
yeah.
Like,
That was it.
there's
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's all about Israel. Yeah,
I
you know,
like to.
I think we would have made peace with Iran a long time ago if it wasn't for Israel. You know, we obviously had this initial conflict with them, the takeover of the U.S. embassy and the hostages that were held for 444 days. Though, of course, the Iranians point out that that was actually a response to the CIA-sponsored coup in the 1950s. But anyway, you know, that was a long time ago, and we could have the Iranians have offered, you know, held out their hand, offered the peace pipe many times since then, say, okay, we can let's bury these differences, but we have remained unrelentingly hostile, and I think it's because, okay, there was this initial hostility over the embassy incident, which is understandable, but it's eventually the neocons, you know, and the Zionists, which were pretty much the same thing within U.S. administration. They saw Iran as the enemy, you know, because they are the great power in the region, the only one that really can oppose Israel, and that's why Israel feels that they need to take him out.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question, and I know you're going to hate this question, but what would America be like if the state of Israel was never created? I mean, it just changed everything in the world.
Yeah,
It changed
yeah,
everything for us,
right.
and it was something that it didn't it shouldn't have ever happened.
Right,
This never should have happened to begin with.
right.
To create this ethno supremacist state, this Zionist entity, which was a secular movement to begin with.
Yeah, right.
It's would we just all be singing songs together and holding hands and
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it would have an effect both on, you know, on American society because again, like, you know, Zionism has become such a powerful force within Protestant churches in this country. You know, there would be different changes there, I'm sure. The most obvious would be in U.S. foreign policy and its relations with the rest of the world. You know, there's no question that that our standing in the world would be much higher, and you know, our relations with all kinds of countries, you know, particularly in the Middle East, but not limited to the Middle East, would be much better. Um, yeah, that's really all I can say. You know, there's probably I don't know. Those counterfactuals are hard to answer sometimes. I'm sure that um, the differences would be even deeper. I think, you know, if we could actually see that, look into a crystal ball, I think we would probably be shocked by how different it is. You know, those are just things
right.
that come to mind immediately because it has
We
been such an important part of the U.S. consciousness, you know, not just foreign policy, but just domestic consciousness for such a long time. I think it's probably warped our thinking in all areas, in all kinds of realms, you know, more than we realize.
right. Warp is the whole world. I wish we could get into the
Yeah.
multiverse and
Well, it's
see
interesting,
a
you know, in
parallel
Europe,
universe.
you know, we have Joseph Borrell, who's going to be stepping down. He's kind of like the I don't know what his title is, but like the foreign minister for the EU. Um, but he just, you know, recently is saying that, boy, we have to stop this war in you know, in Gaza, it's and Lebanon, because it's really hurting Europe too. You know, it's just like because we're, you know, basically admitting that we're complicit in this, and you know, the rest of the world is reevaluating Europe and looking at Europe as a bunch of hypocrites. You know, who's admitting this. This is a problem. We need to stop this.
Right. I saw that.
Yeah. Now his solution was pathetic. He said, "Well, you know, so we have to impose sanctions." Say, "Well, okay, yeah, good." You know, we're just saying, "Yeah, cut off no more trade with Israel." That could really get their attention. He says, you know, sanctions on products that come from illegal settlements. You know, that's
Hmm.
it would be like 3% of trade or whatever. So it's a step in the right direction, but it's just a meaningless, really. You know, it was just verbiage. And then the woman that's going to replace him, you know, he's been terrible, like they all are, but she's even worse. He's just a total nut on it, you know, on all foreign policy issues. I think the former prime minister of Estonia. Yeah, she basically wants NATO to just go ahead and attack Russia and start to wage economic war against China. It's going to be this is who they picked as their foreign minister, and I'm sure she's a Zionist, an extreme Zionist, like all the rest
Is
of
there
them
a
are.
democratic process in this at all within the EU when they pick these appointments?
Well, the EU is not at all democratic. It's really just it's a bureaucracy. I mean, there is a European Parliament, but they don't really have any power. So it's just every time, like these countries, when you become part of the EU, you actually surrender a lot of sovereignty. The EU, the bureaucrats in Brussels claim sovereignty over, the right to review all your laws and to, actually, impose fines if you're not in conformity with EU regulations and so on and so forth. Yeah, and they decide their own foreign policy, and if you don't toe the line, then you're in trouble. Viktor Orban is held out against them, but they've openly said that we need to take out this guy, and he's held out bravely, and I really hope that he continues to, and that others join him, but they have ways of making Hungary hurt, and they've already done things, imposed fines and denied them subsidies and that kind of thing.
So much for Western democracy, then, right?
Yeah,
I mean, this is so it is kind of interesting that we look at your Western Europe and the United States as this is the bastion of democracy, freedom, and human rights, and then we're supporting this genocide in Gaza.
Right.
And it's so hypocritical, especially when you juxtapose it against the Russian conflict. Everybody's really condemned it. And then I think, was it 3 weeks, Israel killed more civilians than both Ukraine and Russia combined. It's this,
in 2 years or something.
Right. Yeah, in 2 years in Russia and Ukraine, Israel in 3 weeks killed more civilians. And not a peep from the Western community.
Yeah.
And
well,
then
also, they're also hypocrites directly about Ukraine. I mean, one thing it just struck me, I think, yesterday, the Western powers have been floating these ceasefire ideas, and usually it's some sort of, okay, we freeze the lines and we agree that Ukraine won't join NATO for a certain number of years. Again, it's absurd. Russia will never accept it, whatever. But there are a lot of different versions. And one thing that I've noticed is that they never mention the rights of Russians, of ethnic Russians and Russian speakers. And that's one of the, the requirements that the Russians have put forth, from the beginning, is that their rights need to be respected. And you would think that the Europeans are supposedly all about minority rights and whatever, that they would be concerned about that, and they would make that part of their, their solution. It just obviously doesn't even concern them. They couldn't care less if Russians are persecuted, as they are, terribly persecuted within Ukraine, but also within like the Baltic states too. Russian speakers they've been deprived of all kinds of rights, and
even voting rights. I heard.
Yeah, right. But Europeans couldn't care less. They're just total hypocrites. I just despise them, really.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll see them voted out. It does. I hope the tide's turning. I just feel, I think that's maybe one of the positives of Trump winning the presidency, is that there is more freedom to speak out against the Ukraine war now. People kind of can see the direction it's going.
Right.
And I'm noticing it already on Twitter. People are saying, no more money to Ukraine. We're done with this, Right.
Well, it even had an effect in Europe. It's really funny, but there was some sort of European official. He might have been a European Parliament member. He said that, maybe, we should reduce the amount of money going to Ukraine. We couldn't say this before, but now that Trump's been elected, we can say this. He actually went out and made this statement. It just shows, again, it's a vassal mentality. It's just like, our masters back home are allowing us now to say this. Yeah, masters back in the United States.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Dan. Well, I think let's end it there then.
Sure.
Okay. Have a good weekend.
All right.
Okay.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.